The big question everybody's wanting to know the answer to is, why did you step away?
A top lawyer just walked away from a double murder case on the day of the arraignment. Page 6 is now revealing why Alan Jackson, the man who defended Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, suddenly dropped Nick Reiner's case, and what he said will leave you speechless. Why would one of the most high-profile defense attorneys in the country quit at the most critical moment? What did he see that made him step back? And does his exit reveal something darker about this case than anyone realized? Here's what we know. On January 7th, Alan Jackson stood before a judge and said he had no choice but to withdraw from representing Nick Reiner. No choice. Think about that for a second. This is a man who has defended Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey. He doesn't walk away from cases. But with Nick Reiner, something changed. And what makes this even stranger is the timing. Jackson dropped the case on the exact same day Nick was supposed to be arraigned. The arraignment had to be pushed all the way to February 23rd because of this. So the question becomes, what happened between December and January that made Jackson decide he couldn't continue? According to multiple interviews Jackson gave this week, including one with Billy Bush on the Hot Mic podcast and another with Kelly Ripa on Let's Talk Off Camera, he's not willing to say. When Billy Bush pressed him for answers, Jackson's response was chilling. He said, "That's a confidential communication between a lot of folks that I'm not willing to disclose."
The big question everybody's wanting to know the answer to is, why did you step away?
That's a confidential communication between a lot of folks that I'm not willing to disclose.
But that's not the full story. Jackson went further. He made it clear that people shouldn't speculate about money. He said, "You can't say that something happened with the retainer because I've never said that. Obviously, something happened with my ability and my team's ability to continue the representation. But I don't want you, your audience, or anybody else to start speculating as to what that might be." Does that sound like a normal withdrawal to you? Because to me, it sounds like Jackson knows something he legally cannot talk about. And here's what makes this even darker. Prosecutors are reportedly investigating claims that a drink may have been tampered with the night of the murders. Could this be why Jackson walked away? Did he learn something about that drink that changed everything? Because if there's evidence of tampering, this case just became something much more sinister than a family tragedy. Let me take you back to how this all began. On December 14th, 2025, Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner were found dead in their Brentwood, California home. Both had been stabbed. Their daughter Romy discovered the bodies. Court documents show that Nick had allegedly been in an argument with his parents the night before. He was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. If convicted, Nick faces life in prison without parole or the death penalty. This is as serious as it gets. Now, here's where Alan Jackson enters the picture. On December 15th, just one day after the murders, Jackson received a phone call. He described this call in his interview with Billy Bush, and listen carefully to how he phrases this. Jackson said, "I have to show fealty and loyalty to the confidentiality that attends that kind of phone call. I got on a flight nearly immediately."
I'm going to ask you, but
Sure.
Were the siblings sort of immediately wanting to help Nick? Was the person on the other end of the phone call, this was, we want, as tragic as the event is, we want to help our brother too?
Again, I don't mean to be coy, and I know you got to ask the questions, and a lot of people are interested, but I have to show fealty and loyalty to the confidentiality that attends that kind of phone call, that kind of communication. I can tell you that immediately thereafter, I dropped everything.
He dropped everything. He flew out to take this case. For a lawyer of Jackson's caliber, that means he believed there was something worth defending. And for 3 weeks, he did exactly that. He represented Nick at his first court hearing on December 17th, where Nick appeared in a suicide prevention smock. Jackson spoke publicly about the complexity of the case, acknowledging Nick's struggles with schizophrenia and substance abuse. He said these factors needed to be thoroughly but very carefully dealt with and examined. But then, 21 days later, it all fell apart. On January 7th, Jackson told the court he had to withdraw. He used the phrase, "I have no choice." Think about that. A lawyer doesn't just quit unless something went terribly wrong. Either Nick lied to him or Jackson discovered something so disturbing he couldn't stay. And he's legally not allowed to tell us what it was. Jackson has refused to elaborate, but the fact that he's bound by confidentiality tells us this isn't about a disagreement over strategy or even money. This is about something that happened behind closed doors, something that legally prevents him from continuing. But here's what makes this story even more unsettling. Despite stepping down, despite refusing to explain why, Alan Jackson doubled down on Nick's innocence. In his interview with Billy Bush, Jackson said, "I believe in it. I believe exactly what I said. What I said is the truth. Under the laws of the state of California, he's not guilty." That's a powerful statement. Jackson still believes the prosecution hasn't proven their case. He still believes Nick deserves to be defended. He still believes there's a way to fight this. But if he believes that, why did he leave? Jackson also made another revealing comment during his appearance with Kelly Ripa. When asked if he cares whether his clients are guilty, he said, "I don't really care whether a client is guilty. I care about the Constitution. I care about whether or not the government got their job right." His whole philosophy is this: it doesn't matter what he personally believes. What matters is whether the government can prove it. He even said, "Indefensible never comes up. There's very little in the law that's indefensible." So if that's Jackson's entire worldview, and if he truly believes Nick has a shot at winning this, then walking away makes no sense. What could override a commitment like that? Let's pause and think about the bigger picture here. This case isn't just about a lawyer quitting. It's about a 32-year-old man accused of killing his own parents in one of the most brutal ways imaginable. It's about a family shattered by violence, mental illness, and addiction. Rob Reiner was 78 years old. Michelle was 70. Their daughter found them. Their son is now facing the death penalty, and the attorney who flew across the country to defend that son walked away 3 weeks later without explanation. The public is left with questions that may never be answered. What was said in that confidential phone call on December 15th? What happened between Jackson and Nick, or Jackson's team, that made continuing impossible? And why is Jackson still insisting Nick is not guilty if something went so wrong that he had to withdraw? And what about that tampered drink? Is that the key to this entire mystery? Did prosecutors find something that connects Nick to it in a way Jackson couldn't reconcile? These three contradictions don't add up, and that's what makes this story so gripping. There's a piece of the puzzle we're not being shown, and it's a piece that could change everything. As of now, Nick Reiner remains in custody. His arraignment is set for February 23rd, and Kimberly Green will be the one standing beside him. Alan Jackson has moved on. He told Billy Bush, "I dropped everything to work on Nick's case, and now I've withdrawn." But the shadow of his departure hangs over this case, because when a lawyer like Alan Jackson says he has no choice but to leave and then refuses to explain why, it sends a message. Something happened, something significant, something that, in Jackson's own words, he simply cannot divulge. As more details come out, this story is far from over. The arraignment in February could bring new revelations. The prosecution will present its evidence. The defense will have to rebuild its strategy under new leadership. And the public will keep asking the same question: why did Alan Jackson really walk away? If you want updates the moment they drop, you know what to do.